Hey everyone! Welcome to day 3 of my 12 Days of Interactive December Dailies video series. Today is a bit of a special post because Ali Edwards and a group of us from the December Daily creative team are doing an Instagram hop to showcase different ways of using this same product, which is the plastic hearts from the December Daily collection. So make sure you head over to my Instagram post after this video to see all the different ways we came up with to use up these plastic hearts. For my page, I decided to use these plastic hearts to create some pockets so that I can document a few of my favorite things around the Christmas holiday. Now, I know these plastic hearts sold out quite fast, but if you are interested in trying this idea out, you can make your own by getting the digital version from the Ali Edwards shop and printing them out on some clear transparencies. And I'll link down in the description box below the type of transparency that I like to use when printing out my own acetate pieces. I was inspired by the heart pockets that were released, I think in the travel collection, as well as in one of the add-ons to the story kit this year. And I was inspired to create my own heart pockets, kind of similar to those. And because the plastic hearts themselves are kind of see-through, I decided to use acetate instead of cardstock to create my pockets. And this is just some scrap acetate that I had left over from when I made my snow globe shaker pouch. I'm going to tape this temporarily to the front of the plastic heart with some purple removable tape so that the acetate doesn't move around as I'm punching my holes. And then I'm using my awl to poke holes about every 1/4 of an inch around the perimeter of the heart. So because I'm punching through 2 layers of plastic, I do have to apply quite a bit of pressure to get my awl to go through. And you can see I'm using the weight of both my hands to press this down. It does make kind of like a loud snapping sound. I'm going to leave the audio in here for a bit so that you can hear what that sounds like. So yeah, don't be alarmed if it makes that sound because that's normal. And once I've poked some holes around the perimeter of the plastic heart, I'm going to start stitching this together with my purple tape still in place. Now, I learned a few things after stitching 8 of these hearts together, so you might want to watch this entire video before trying this yourself so that you can learn from my mistakes and from my tips and tricks. First off, I tried using this DMC light gold embroidery floss to do my stitching. This is the color E3821, and this was my first time using this embroidery floss, and it didn't really work out the way I wanted it to. This particular embroidery floss comes with 12 individual strands, so I decided to use half of it, and I think it turned out to be a bit too much because I had a really hard time trying to get it through all these holes. Also, these metallic flosses are a lot stiffer than the regular flosses that I use from DMC, so I noticed that it was a lot harder to get my stitches tight, and I found that the threads got tangled a lot easier as well. And another thing that I didn't realize before I started was that the holes in the acetate, especially when you're passing the needle through the back of the heart to the front, are kind of sharp around the edges. So that not only does that make the stitching a bit harder to do, it also starts to fray the thread a bit as you're stitching. Now, I haven't tried stitching on acetate with normal, non-metallic embroidery floss from DMC, nor have I tried stitching on paper with this metallic embroidery floss, so I'm not really sure if the using non-metallic embroidery floss would do the same thing, but after like 20 minutes of very difficult stitching, I only had about halfway of this done, and I ended up with a tangle of frayed floss and had to undo everything. So I decided to switch to a different gold thread next. This is some gold thread from American Crafts, and I think these are made for sewing. And this one worked so much better because it's a bit of a softer thread, and also because I used 2 strands instead of using 6 strands like I did with the DMC one. So, a few additional tips that I learned along the way. When you're poking the holes, make sure that your awl or whatever poking tool you're using is at a straight 90-degree angle up and down with the surface that you're working on. And make sure that you're applying pressure evenly from above. And that's because the transparency and the plastic hearts are slippery. So if your awl is slanted or if you're not applying even pressure, then your awl can slip as you're trying to press it down and cause some scratch marks onto your plastic heart. Next, you might want to get a disposable hard surface to go underneath your foam mat if you're applying a lot of pressure like I am, because as you'll see when I remove this black foam mat, my awl managed to poke through the foam mat and through the white poster paper that I'm working on and onto my plastic craft table. Fortunately, my table isn't very expensive. It's pretty cheap actually, so I'm not too bummed about that. But if you're working on like a nicer table or a nicer crafting surface, you want to keep that in mind as well. Also, you want to make sure to remove the plastic backing off of all the plastic hearts before you start the stitching because, of course, once it's stitched together, it's pretty much near impossible to remove. With the stitching, I found that even with this gold thread, I still got a bit of fraying where my needle was. So I chose to double up and use 2 strands instead of just 1 to provide a bit of extra stability. And I found that I needed about 24 inches of string to stitch around one heart, with a bit left over at the end to tuck in and finish up the project. Also, the way that I usually stitch is to thread both strands through my needle head, then leave a bit overhanging so that the needle stays on my thread. But by doing that, I actually have to pass 4 strands of thread through every hole. Which is a lot harder to do because the edges of the holes aren't smooth. So it's a lot easier to pass 1 strand of string that's double the length through your needle and then stop your needle at the middle of your thread so that you're still stitching with 2 strands of thread, but you're only passing 2 strands through every hole, if that makes sense. Also, if it gets too difficult on your fingers to push the needle through the holes, you can always push it through kind of part way and then press the back end of the needle down against the table to help you push that needle through. And don't be afraid to kind of wiggle and bend the plastic as well to get the needle through. As long as you're not folding that acetate in half, it won't crease on you. And once you're done stitching all the way around, you can use your scissors to cut off the extra overhanging acetate and then remove your purple tape, and then your pocket's done. All in all, each heart probably took about 15 to 20 minutes to do, which isn't bad, besides the one that I messed up on at the beginning that took me a lot longer. So the whole process from starting to figure things out to when I was done stitching these was it took me about 3 hours. Now that I have all of my hearts stitched up and ready to go, I'm moving on to the decorating. I'm using the 10 by 8 small star pattern paper from the December Daily main kit as my base, and there are 9 full-size stars on that page, so I'm going to use the 8 hearts that I've turned into pockets, as well as an extra red heart that I'm going to place my number on in the center. And I purposely made sure to pick out 3 green hearts, 3 red hearts, and 3 that were kind of like a white base. And I made sure as well not to pick out any of the ones that have text in the middle of them. I've also typed out 8 of my favorite things around the holiday season, and I've cut them down to 1 inch wide by 1/2 inch tall so that they'll be able to fit into my pockets. So now comes the fun part of picking out embellishments that are small enough to fit into these pockets, but are also going to be representative of the things that I've picked out as my favorite things. The first thing I'm going to do is to use the Paislee Press stamp set to stamp out this little cup to go with hot chocolate in Starbucks. And of course, I just had to stamp this out in some red ink because of all the cute red cups that Starbucks releases every year. And here I used the crimson ink from Altenew, but it just was a bit too orangey in tone for the rest of the colors on my page, so I eventually stamped that out in a different red ink later on. I picked out one of the fabric presents from the Paislee Press Mini Kit to go with picking out the perfect presents. And I'm going to use my embossing anti-static powder tool to remove the stickiness from the backs of the Christmas tree and the rainbow from this sheet of funny puffy stickers. The tree will go with hanging ornaments up on the tree, and the rainbow will go with baking Christmas cookies. I think it was just because the lines of the rainbow kind of reminded me of lines of icing on some sugar cookies. I also took out one of the red felt stars from the main kit, and that will go with putting up the holiday decor. I was debating about putting in each of these typed out word bits just straight into the pockets, but I decided I wanted to mat them onto something to give them a bit more stability and to let them stand out on the page a bit more. So here I'm just using some Kraft cardstock, and just for fun, I decided to make them all into mini tags with some gold thread tied through the tops. I also added one of the red Glitter Heart Cardstock Stickers to go with visiting with family and friends, and one of these house chipboard stickers to go with Christmas parties and potlucks. And I made sure to remove the stickiness on the backs of those as well before I put them into my pockets. Here's where I stamped out that cup again in a darker red ink. This is in the Altenew color Velvet. And I did adhere that stamped image onto another piece of white cardstock before I trimmed it out, just to give it a bit more stability as well. And finally, to go with sending out Christmas cards, I originally had the pleather Happy Mail piece from the Paislee Press Mini Kit, but I decided instead to create a little vellum envelope. And I love how in all of these different pockets, I have a variety of different textures in my embellishments. I tried to use 1/8 inch Scor Tape to adhere these plastic hearts, but the Scor Tape just didn't stick as well onto that plastic surface, so I did eventually move to using 3/8 inch Scor Tape instead, and that worked a lot better. And funny enough, these transparent hearts aren't actually all that transparent, so you can see a bit behind them if the background is dark. But in terms of adhesive, I was able to get away with using the Scor Tape just fine, and you can't really notice it at all in my page. And the Scor Tape helps to tack down any loose ends that I might have had with my gold thread stitching, so that's a bonus as well. I did debate about adding some puffy star stickers around that number 2 there, but I decided in the end that there were already a lot of stars on this page and a lot of different textures going on, so I just left that plain on that page there. Once I have my holes punched in this page, I'm going to put it into my binder. So this will go immediately after my matchbook folio, which was story number 1. And so on the back of this matchbook folio that I had made out of my Star mini kit packaging, I'm going to spell out the title for this page, which is A Few of My Favorite Things, which of course is from The Sound of Music. And I'm using the white glitter Chipboard Alpha stickers to do that. Overall, this page took a bit more time because of the stitching at the beginning, but I love how this turned out with the cute little embellishments tucked into each pocket. I'll leave a link to my Instagram page in the description box below, so make sure you head on over to check out how Ali and the rest of the December Daily creative team used these plastic hearts. If you liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and make sure to subscribe to my channel for more December Daily inspiration. Thanks so much for watching!